Hey, welcome to the GeekMom Game of Thrones recap. This is episode 7 of season 4, Mockingbird. And unlike the titles of the last episodes, which were a little bit of a mouthful, this is a single word, but not without meaning. As we know, the folks over at Game of Thrones love to make sure we know that they're thinking very deeply about every episode. This episode was called Mockingbird, and if you're not familiar with mockingbirds, you don't know that they talk a lot, and they echo sounds of other birds, hence the word mockingbird. And certainly this episode had more conversation in it than I think the entire season. I thought it was actually a really good episode. I was surprised that the lack of, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as we're kind of used to, kind of came to a halt, and it was a lot of really interesting conversations between characters. So, Andrea, why don't you tell us about your first, what comes to mind first from the episode, rather than going necessarily chronologically? What conversation, what scenes resonated with you?
All right. Well, I definitely liked the development of the female gaze with Daenerys and her good friend Arya. It was actually really entertaining, and so I guess I shouldn't mock all the male gaze you see in the show, but when, he walks into her bedroom and she's just sitting there with a glass of wine, I was like, all right, I could watch this show. I'm gonna go against everything I've said before and say, let's hear it for sexy sexiness on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, actually, when she's like, so do what you're good at, take off your shirt. I was like, yes, finally.
Our little
finally.
I
mean, we did have that recasting of Dario. That's a little odd. I like how they had to, when Jorah was talking about him, he kind of had to walk the audience through who he was again. Remember, he brought you those heads, and that was weird. He looked a little different, but we're kind of getting over that. But I thought that was, we really haven't seen that side of Dany. It's been very much her as the queen and mother of dragons, and not someone who has desires and takes what she wants. So I thought that was interesting. How did that make you feel, Michael?
Do you feel like an object now, Michael?
Are you jealous of Dario's abs?
You said abs?
For me, the best part of that whole scene was when he was leaving the following morning and bumped into Jorah. Like, how's it going? What's up?
She's in a good mood.
Yeah.
Yep.
Buttered her up for you. For me, it was I identify a little bit with Jorah in that particular situation because he's really put in the hours. He's been along for the entire journey, and sure, at the very beginning, he was kind of spying on her for.
I'm confused where this metaphor is going, but continue.
He has something to tell you, Natanya.
I love the interplay. I love the way that Dany kind of used the two men. In the way that I think a queen has to in some situations.
Yeah, that was a total team building exercise at the end, wasn't it?
Team building in Westeros. A thesis in 2 parts. Yeah, no, I love the parting. Like, tell him I changed my mind. No, wait. Tell him you changed my mind.
It keeps everyone guessing at where they are in the hierarchy, which is probably good for keeping everyone paying attention.
Well, and I think this is a continuing part of the conversation of what Dany really truly believes in, and what her, for lack of a better term, her platform is as queen. It's very smart of her to send her best out to Yunkai to try to take it back, because if she starts losing in cities she's gained, she hasn't made any progress at all. And if they just keep slipping back into the bad ways, I liked her. They can live in my new world or die in the old world they built. It was yeah, I know, it was super booming. And I was saying they've been giving her all the good lines. Her and Tyrion, I think, have the best lines back and forth. Yeah, I think it wasn't a ton of her, but she was certainly, I definitely envied that shot of her hair coming down her back. And her clothes were just beautiful. So she's, and it's the little things that show that she's not just a little girl anymore. She's taking pride in her appearance because her hair doesn't naturally curl like that. Someone had to do it for her, and her dress was very cut out very strategically to show out her abs. So, she's coming of age in some very interesting ways.
So that was the scene that I remember first. What about you, Michael?
For me, it's the scene that I really can't get out of my head. For worse, I think, than better, is the Mountain, the introduction of the Mountain, and his sort of display of savagery against, I guess, some prisoners from the dungeons, the Red Keep dungeons.
I was wondering, have we seen a full disembowelment before on the show, or was that another first?
Oh, I'm sure we have. I mean,
have we? Because when Cersei was like climbing over the intestines, wow, that really didn't need.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little gratuitous, but I think it definitely kind of introduced his character pretty effectively. I mean, he's a big dude. I love the fact that the actor who played him was apparently in talks to be on an NFL team a year or two ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, the dude's massive, and I think he does a fantastic job of portraying that particular sort of animal danger of this guy. And I love how that particular scene really sort of played with the later scenes from Sandor and telling Arya kind of about what his brother had done to him.
That's what I was just sitting here thinking. Imagine growing up with him as a brother and not feeling like you were protected at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought that was that's really a lot. I kind of complained the last episode about the Arya and the Hound, but I felt this episode they really brought it up a notch. Not just because Arya's developing her own brand of savagery, but because you get that insight into the Hound's. I mean, because up until this point, he's kind of been that tower of a man, right? What could scare him? His brother scares him, who lit him on fire when they were kids. I mean, it's brutal, and it's more depth than we've ever seen from him before.
Well, and
it's supposed to just be a sellsword.
In a weird way, she's a child and he's an adult, and it's not a romantic relationship that they have. But
thankfully,
but making himself vulnerable like that, there's something almost it deepens the friendship that they have, the extremely unlikely friendship that they have. That he did that. I just thought that was an interesting way to develop their relationship. Him as vulnerable. It was an interesting inversion.
Yeah, it's definitely cool that you have this character that is, he's the most savage character from the entire series in a lot of ways. And then suddenly, here's his big brother, and here's a big explanation as to why the Hound is the way he is.
And I think it totally makes sense that that's who Cersei chooses, and it's really interesting that, because we only had that one scene with her, and I should point out her wig did not look as good today, or last episode. It was very yellowy, but these are the things that I
hadn't noticed.
Yeah, it felt, because I mean she's a natural brunette, and there's sort of it didn't quite look right, but that she's there in the blood and guts, and she's completely thrown off Jaime. If this had been a year ago, there would have been no question. But she's choosing. It's like she's overcompensating to choose this, and that she's choosing someone that is so. I mean, if there is an evil, completely sociopathic individual, it's him. And to hear the backstory and how that weaves into Oberyn's story with his sister Elia, it's horrible. I mean, there are a lot of reprehensible people in this series, but I think the Mountain takes the cake.
Right. Well, and it might be an insight into Cersei's psyche and how little confidence she has, that she feels like she has to pull out the biggest, baddest guy in the kingdom when, it doesn't look like Tyrion has anyone.
Especially given the fact that Cersei has made absolutely sure that the only person that might be able to stand up for Tyrion has been bribed away.
Yep.
Bronn.
Who, you know what? I liked him in that scene, and he's so bad. But I was like, he's playing it straight at least.
I felt the opposite. I felt such like almost a heart swell of pride in the relationship between Bronn and Tyrion in that scene, because they were both just like laying it out. They were both like,
right. That's what I'm.
Bronn was like, I can't do this, man. You know that. And Tyrion is like, yeah, you're right. That would be crazy.
That would be stupid.
I wouldn't do it, and I haven't done it because look at me. It was just that was my favorite scene of the entire show.
Yeah, I liked when he said, "If I wanted wits in a wife, I'd marry you," to Tyrion.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah, it was like, oh, that would be awesome. It's like another buddy show that I want to watch.
So to take a quick sort of break from this, because I think we want to come back to Tyrion and his conversation with Oberyn and that kind of that side thing. We did also have some odd kind of, I felt maybe sort of satellite conversations that were going on. So we certainly have Brienne and Podrick, and the reappearance of Hot Pie.
And Hot Pie!
Which made me so happy. It's ridiculous. I was like, it's Hot Pie! Oh my god, it's Hot Pie!
I yelped when he came on, and my husband only started watching this season with me, and he's like, what? Who is he? And I was like, it's Hot Pie!
Yeah, it's probably a little confusing if you haven't seen the first few seasons. But and then we had the conversation between the Stannis' wife, and I can't remember her name.
What is it? Selyse?
Selyse, yes. Her daughter Shireen. Selyse and Melisandre. And I thought Michael made a really interesting comment when we were watching it, and saying that reading the books, if we've mentioned this before, not everybody has a point of view, and Melisandre is one of those characters that is not, you don't get much from her experience, all people sort of seeing her as part of the sort of tapestry. But because we see her so much more directly, she's a lot easier to hate. And part of it's the performance, but that was a particularly painful scene, I thought. And well, I'm not a huge fan of the Lord of Light, I gotta say. I think I'd be out there in the weirwood with the weretree, because at least you got choices, and it's kind of dark and creepy. But man, the Lord of Light, yeah.
She strikes me as one of those sort of cult leaders who's just like, she just uses the Lord of Light as her kind of way to get what she wants. And maybe, I mean, obviously he has some sort of influence
right,
cosmically or whatever, but the sort of cruelty in what she does and how she does it, and sort of the way she carries herself, makes her seem like she has all of these sort of selfish interests, and she's just like, oh, the Lord of Light says to do this.
Yeah. It's all very convenient, really.
I was wondering, I mean, first of all, I thought that that scene implied that, when Selyse said, maybe we should leave Shireen at home, she's not a big believer, and she's just going to get in the way. And
she's sick. I mean, she has medical issues.
Right. But Melisandre was like, no, there's a place for her. And that made me almost think, is she saying that Shireen is going to have to be sacrificed?
Yeah, that sounded really creepy.
And then, she was having Selyse go through her potion bottles. And I think she actually touched one that Melisandre said, oh, that one, just a drop and people will fall in love with me. And I was wondering if she kind of did a little voodoo on Selyse there to, like, almost seduced her in a way, yeah, with the potion, to get her to say, yes, we will bring my daughter, who, we've seen in the past that royal blood has purposes for the Lord of Light.
I think the royal blood is important, but I think too that the fact that even if it wasn't sorcery, she was appealing to her strength, and certainly in the world of Westeros, much like the world of actual world, strength in women is not something you hear people talk about very often. And Melisandre has managed to be in, the ear to a potential, heir to the throne. And for her to compliment Selyse on how strong she is and how she can cope with this was kind of like, sweet kitty, gentle kitty. She's kind of wrapped around her, and it was a little disturbing. But I think in the books, Selyse is not anywhere near as predominant as she's in the series, and I'm actually really glad that they do. I think the actress she's a great actress. So I think that's a good choice for them to make, because it really does kind of ground who Stannis is a little bit more. He's a hard character to portray because he's like as boring as watching moss grow on a rock. But having sort of this depth behind him and these women behind him and the backstory of his wife and his daughter, I think is kind of helping in that department a little bit. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I'm glad that they introduced them. I know that he went, I think, an entire season without any mention of the two of them, and it was just kind of like, I wonder if they're going to cut that out. And then they brought them in, I guess, last season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about Brienne and Pod, shall we?
Okay.
Before we get to the other meat of the episode. Michael.
So
and hot pie, okay? Hot pie. Most importantly, hot pie and his Wolfie cracker cake.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was a little bit of a cheap shot how they were.
No.
I'm not talking about hot pie. I'm glad hot's back. It's the fact that they were kind of setting it up to be another one of those damned missed connections.
Right.
Game of Thrones is so good for, and then they were like. I just assumed that they were gonna tease us with that and then not have it pan out. They actually had a hot pie come through.
Right before they came to the fork in the road.
I know, that was really kind of hilarious.
So was there any sort of revelation as to which path they took? Because I did they go like, well, if we head right, heading to the Eyrie, and because then they like walked right, and I was like, well, I don't remember which way that was.
Yeah, I don't either, but I will say that Hot Pie's diatribe on the nuances of making a delicious kidney pie was one of my favorite parts of the season. Period.
Well, and
just the looks on their faces, like, why gravy? What are you talking about? It was
like he, because of where he was and what he did, he was actually in a rare position to not be aware of all the, really emotionally aware of the horror that was going on outside. Like, his biggest issue was it's really hard to find a good cut of meat to make a good pie from, and so you want to see people like that. It's almost, it's very hopeful. It's like,
I mean, it's his name, for God's sake. Opinion
I guess if he sucks at making hot pies and his name's Hot Pie, it's pretty awful. But he's like one of the only people that sort of, there's lots of casualties of the sort of the Stark children and the Brotherhood and all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, I was sold here, but it's cool. I make kidney pies. It's awesome. Like, I mean, I could have been at the wall. I could have been, but I get to make hot pies, and my name is Hot Pie. So I thought it was delivered great. I loved the look on Pod and Brienne's faces, and it's kind of one of those like, the world is falling to pieces, and you're talking about kidney pie. But it's like when she compliments him, it's like you can tell no one said anything up to this point. It's like sort of the geek in the room. But yeah, I did find that the fork in the road was a little bit heavy-handed.
I thought of you as soon as they did that shot. I thought, oh, Natanya's gonna love that shot.
But I will say, I continue to love Brienne's armor. partially because, there was that big meme on the internet, or not meme, but like sort of discussion about if women were to wear armor, they wouldn't actually wear it with their breasts protruding because it would basically cause them to get like killed.
Right.
Because the swords would, glance off them and hit them in the neck. So she's definitely wearing, a men's, very flat-chested armor. It's gorgeous. And, I know the actress has said that it's a pain to have to walk around in this stuff. I do hope for this season they've at least made it a little bit less authentic. But it was still funny. He was like, "Are you a knight?" Because when people are dressed like that, usually they're knights.
Yeah, I mean, he was just innocent, and in a world where innocence seems to be the first thing to go, compare that with Arya and how, she's definitely, she's lost her innocence and is kind of becoming a nihilist at this point. So seeing that someone young could still just be kind of goofy and fun and happy, that was a hopeful little vignette.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things about Arya, to kind of go over to that a little bit. We certainly had the mercy killing followed by the not-so-mercy killing. I think one of the things that Arya's been set up from since the very beginning is, even though she's definitely got her own personality, she's a very quick learner. So whether it was with the Braavosi guy, what the heck was his name? Or with the faceless dude or whatever. Like every time she's met somebody, she's learned ridiculously fast, and I think that's accelerated to the point that she's certainly seen the Hound kill people before, and she's certainly seen the dark side. But the fact that after killing that old man, she immediately turned around, and the minute she had his name, I mean, there was no hesitation. There was no failure. It wasn't like a bad killing where you have to like beat it over the club for an hour before it finally dies. She just did it without thought. It was more like a reflex, and that's it's really kind of profound and dark for me, but interesting. Well, I love Arya, so
it's a way. She's gifted. She's
right,
but she's being forced in this world to use her gifts for dark purposes. So, you're forced to think, what would she have grown up to be like if she hadn't gone through these experiences that she's bright, she's funny and empathetic. She has all these good qualities, but yet at the same time she just turned right around and killed that guy. I think that's
although, I almost wonder if, to me, the juxtaposition of finding out about Joffrey's death and then killing the man was sort of this very, you'd think because Joffrey had been so much of a catalyst of her changing, that would have almost like given her permission to kind of let it go. Instead, it's not. And I think that's part of her sort of psychology of like, once you kind of go down that road, vengeance is not something that is easily sated, that easily goes away. So I think she's a phenomenal actress for that particular role. I don't even know how you get like a 14-year-old girl to do some of those scenes.
No, and then you see like selfies on Facebook, and she's like,
yeah, I know.
She's a normal 14-year-old kid. So
I don't know. I think that I was certainly a 14-year-old boy, so I can't necessarily make the same comments, but I definitely had a dark side to me when I was that age, and I think that it probably gives her a nice outlet to be able to explore that, in her imagination as in character.
Yeah, and I think,
good at it.
I don't know, as I sort of wonder who is the inheritance of Ned Stark, I almost wonder if, she is the best example of what happens when you take that kind of justice to its extreme, right? Because when the books are set up, the story is set up that Ned is the hero, and then he dies in the first, half of the first season. But she takes a lot of the teachings that he's had, that that there is such thing as justice, that there is such thing as, you have to pay for the crimes that you do. Everything that she's done, you can tell who her dad was.
But not honor. She doesn't care about that.
No, she doesn't care about honor at all.
She has the justice, but she also has the sort of world weariness necessary to survive, which Ned didn't.
which I think she got from her mother. And if we talk about sort of the complicated relationship between Peter Baelish and the Tully sisters, I think that that's a really good example of where Arya, I mean, certainly they're trying to set up, Arya and Sansa, Catelyn and Lysa, there's always that competition. There's always that difference. How Catelyn...
Can we finally feel empathy for Sansa now?
Yes. I will say I was won over with the Snow Castle, which is so dorky. But
that was a beautiful scene.
It was, and like for me, just having her walk out there with the snow and to remember those sort of first scenes of her in Winterfell, and at first I was like, oh, she's building a snow, and then I was like, wow, she really has like built everything, and this is a world where we don't have The Sims and we don't have like anything fun that way, and she really took time, and then the little shit-faced Robin comes in and just destroys it, and I kind of wish she was Arya at that point. She could have just.
Well, it surprised me. I mean, first of all, that was to me that was the old Sansa, because when you first meet Sansa and Arya, their nurse is saying, "Oh, Sansa, you do such lovely stitching," and Arya's like, "I can't wait to get out of here. This is all stupid," and you can see that quality of she's got a little bit of she had a perfectionist thing going on in the beginning. She was the perfect princess and she was going to marry the perfect prince, and of course that all goes horribly awry. But it was very charming to see her channel that again when she made the snow castle, and then like you said, and then Robin came out, and for a moment I thought, because Sansa tries hard to be nice.
Yeah.
And so the fact that she actually hauled off and smacked him, I thought, there's a little character growth there. I mean, that's not something she would have done in the past.
Not to mention, Sansa has played by everyone's rules. I mean, we criticize her for being shallow and kind of dumb, but by following what everyone's expected of her to do, including marrying this, malformed dwarf and enduring, torment by Joffrey, and following what Peter said for her to do in the horrible time, she just continually lands herself in worse and worse positions. And you kind of, in a way, you kind of feel her kind of saying in that moment where she slaps him, she's like, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm not going to deal with this. I'm done. I mean, she's immediately completely sad, and then she gets, felt up by Peter.
That was so creepy.
But it was so almost not creepy. That's why it was so creepy. You know what I'm saying? Because you really we're talking about conversations. This whole episode is conversations. You get more about how much he loves Catelyn and what this means and what she is the child he could have had. I mean, she is everything he wanted, but.
And then he starts making out with her. That's screwed up.
I know. I'm not saying that's not screwed up. I'm saying it's more screwed up because you finally get through Peter's veneer. I mean, he's putting on airs for everybody. It comes down for a second.
The Mockingbird.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what kind of makes me wonder. It's like, what is his true motivation here? I mean, is he truly interested in Sansa's well-being? Does he want to prove to everybody that even though he didn't get to marry Catelyn, he's gonna be like Lord of the North? I mean, what's the deal? What's his deal?
Well, or did he just stop emotionally growing at that point where he was almost killed by
Ned's brother.
It was Ned's brother, right?
Brienne.
Did he just stop growing at that point emotionally? And so now he's a man, but he's still stuck in that place of that adolescent. And
I think he is, and I think in some ways when he kind of gave that lecture about if this was a world where love could win out over strength and duty, then you could have been my child. Because he doesn't see himself as strong or someone that has duty. He sees himself as someone who has been always, everything he did was because he loved Catelyn. Everything that he's done since. And I do think in a way he's stunted. He never looked past her. And I kind of want to watch last season's instances where they had brief moments of conversation, and kind of look deeper into those, because we haven't seen a ton of Peter this season, but this was by far the most important, I think.
Well, and then the question comes that has to be asked is, did he know anything about the murder that happened at the, where Catelyn was killed? How much did he really love her? Because I'm assuming that the Red Wedding was a Lannister plan. Did he not know about that? Could he not have done anything to save her if he wanted?
Did he really?
If that was the love of his life?
I mean, I think he may have given up on her at that point, though.
She was newly widowed.
Yeah, I highly doubt that he knew that. I mean, I think she was kind of collateral damage too, because she wasn't necessarily the explicit target of that particular assassination attempt. So
she did get a little heavy-handed there toward the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the real interesting question is, in a world of love, like, would Catelyn have loved him back?
No.
I think she just thought he was kind of cute and sweet. Isn't it cute that you have a crush on me?
Yeah.
But I mean, she didn't. I mean, she was leftovers for Ned. She wasn't even supposed to marry him. So I mean,
no, but she was supposed to marry his older brother. So I wouldn't call her leftovers. I would say.
Well, so sorry. So Ned was leftovers.
Right.
And then Lysa was like leftovers at this point. But she was out. She thought that she could get in with Peter because clearly Catelyn had better opportunities ahead.
Well, and did Lysa imply not only that she killed her husband, but that she killed her father? Was she? She said something. I meant to go back and watch. And when she was talking to Peter, and she was, saying, I killed all these people for you. And I thought she mentioned her father as well. So, like, I think that things are running deeper than. Or that Littlefinger knew more about the murders that were happening around the kingdom than we know now.
It's very likely.
This brings me to an interesting point, is that so we're not talking about the fact that Peter pushed Lysa out the moon door.
Yeah, that's.
And I think that speaking of collateral damage, I think that sort of speaks volumes to the fact that she might be one of the most unsympathetic characters in the whole series. Her voice is shrill,
when she was standing, with Sansa getting ready to push her out the moon door, which they had alluded to 8 times in the scene already, so you knew you were going to see it. That was just so. I thought if Sansa survives this moment, she is, this is a turning point for her character. We're going to see change after this. Because how could you not? Like this,
right.
And this poor girl, she has just been, she has no agency whatsoever. And the people that, even her mother's sister, she can't trust. Who can she trust in this world? And now she's stuck with Uncle Peter.
Creepy Uncle Peter. Sit on my lap, Sansa. No, it's fine.
But when I have to say, watching her go out the moon door, especially after she had just said to Sansa, "It's fascinating what happens to the bodies."
I know. Like a cracked egg. Really, it's just like cracked egg.
Indicating.
I think her egg cracked a long time ago. And I think Robin's egg cracked a long time ago too. We're going to keep going with that birds metaphor. Okay, so I mean that was satisfying. I think it'd be interesting to see when and if they. I mean, we have 3 episodes left, so I kind of felt like they were trying to draw this tight. We were both recognizing that they're kind of slowing down the pace of the books a lot at this point, and judging by the previews, they're not going to do a ton more in that direction. But what's interesting, we had a very brief visit to the Wall. And
Homecoming.
the homecoming, which was nice. But I kind of feel like we've had the same issue. I mean, they did the whole like, oh, here's Jon Snow talking about the oncoming onslaught, and nobody likes him, so no one's going to listen to him. Or if they do like him, they don't want to listen to him because of old face over there. So there wasn't a whole lot. I mean, he was cute. That's what he usually does for the episode.
I have a question, though, and I'm going to address this to Michael. As the man in the room.
Sorry, that wasn't meant like...
Every time Sir Alliser gives Jon Snow a hard time, we get the pouty face.
It's true.
Do you think that Jon Snow should have learned by now that perhaps the pouty face is not an effective way to take direction?
Well, Jon Snow knows nothing, don't you know?
I believe it's pronounced Jon Snow.
Snow.
Yeah, I think that we're kind of seeing the same dead horse beaten over and over again, so that they can kind of extend the plot line up there and not have it advance too far along in comparison to the rest of the stuff. But
yeah,
one of the things that was interesting, I think that they really touched on this time, was the fact that Alliser has something on the other guys that's like kind of making them afraid, or they don't want to speak out publicly, which, you know, no book spoilers, but that may come into play in the next few episodes as far as, you know, what happens at the Wall and how the leadership responds to the oncoming threat. We should have a spoiler cast, because I just want to talk about all of this stuff so badly.
Oh, we talk about. I think we should do that for sure this season, and we talked about it doing it last time.
We talked about doing it an 11th episode where we just kind of.
But I want to say what I think the big reveal at the end of the season is going to be. Oh, I'm not going to say it now. I'm saying I want to do it before the episode.
Yeah, but then. That's just
well, we could do a cast, and it could, like you said, just be a spoiler cast, and don't watch it if you don't want spoilers.
I don't know
maybe a penultimate episode, perhaps.
Yeah, because Lena Headey, she posted a something to her Instagram that was really intriguing for anybody who has read the books, and a major spoiler potentially. So I just want to talk about that so badly.
Okay, well. We're not talking about that right now. So I think the only conversation we haven't covered was actually my favorite conversation, was the conversation between Tyrion and Prince Oberyn. And
but we didn't talk about Tyrion and Jaime either.
Yeah, but I felt like it was more of. I mean, it was cute. It was totally adorable. But did you feel? I didn't really feel like they covered that much more ground. Jaime's like, I'm a cripple. I can't help you. Sorry, bro.
The one thing that I wanted to say about that conversation is that it made me think that there is a permanent schism between Jaime and Cersei. Like that it's not just her rebuffing him, that he is pulling away from her.
Yeah.
And so is bonding with Tyrion. Like I would say that I'm not expecting any more incestuous relations between the two of them. So now we can go on to Tyrion.
I liked that personal little dig that Tyrion gave, though. I thought that was kind of awesome.
And I love Jaime's response.
Exactly.
Be careful.
I'm talking to you. So I have loved Prince Oberyn ever since he stepped onto the stage. And we had talked about at the trial when he kind of wanted to know all the details of what Tyrion was actually doing in the brothels. And for once, I think... following that thread of finding a familiar soul, perhaps, actually helped him out. Although the joke about the blonde that he'd seen being his sister was hilarious. I just thought, you know, this whole episode was about these really intimate scenes between people. And if there was ever a moment that didn't just tell us about Oberyn, but also how much older he is, how much he's seen, you know, you kind of get that feeling that the Lannisters seem like, they want to be here a thousand years. We're going to be this amazing dynasty. And then you have Oberyn who's like, I remember when you were just pooping your pants. And your sister
constant whoring is very good for the complexion.
Well, I mean, I think he's supposed to be in his like 40s or so, and if Tyrion's, he said he was young when he visited Casterly Rock, so he could have been like 12, and Tyrion could have been, it's maybe, but then that sort of the anecdote of him as a baby and that expectation of him being a monster, we've talked about that before, and he certainly had his, I wish I was the monster you all think I am. And the tears, Peter Dinklage had his big doe-eyed tears going on, and it was just, it was beautiful.
People were saying last week, that scene with Tyrion, that's going to be, the scene they show when he accepts his Emmy. But I liked this scene better.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Because I think that there's something really psychologically powerful about, having your worst fear about yourself thrown at you and then just laughed away. I mean, that's basically, that's what Tyrion, his biggest fear is. I am a monster. I killed my mother. I'm malformed. I'm a monster. And to have someone say, you're not such a big monster. Like
that gasp of relief that he gave at the conclusion of Oberyn's story was just... Yeah.
Not to mention, who's the real monster in this story? It's Cersei. I mean, she's the monster. I mean, abusing the baby like that, and then looking at that in contrast with getting the Mountain to fight her fights. Talk about cruelty. And I love that he mentioned that Jaime had to fight her off. That dynamic hasn't changed, And but I also thought I hadn't really noticed this until every single time we see Oberyn Martell, he's wearing gold. I think that's very, very planned on the costumer's part, because the Lannisters are supposed to be the Golden Lions. But yet there's something... What's that?
But they're all out of it.
They are. They're totally out of it. And he kind of...
Dorne, isn't that the sun?
It is the sun.
And the sun?
It is. So I just thought that was really interesting that instead of... I don't know. It just felt really, from a costumer's perspective, you don't hear much about what goes into the thought process, because they could put him in anything. I mean, certainly look at Bronn's costume and Robin's costume. Lots of thought goes into it. But Oberyn is always very either dressed with nothing on, or very specifically wearing gold. And when he was in that dungeon, that contrast of sort of his gold and sun emblazoned raiment against the filth, and really all you see of Tyrion is sort of a little poof of hair and his watery eyes, and
then Oberyn grabs the torch.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I thought it was more subtle and artistic in making a point than, there's a fork in the road. I just want to give credit where it's due, because I think sometimes I'm a little bit harsh on the heavy-handed stuff, but I thought that the work of the costumers, the set designers, and the performance in that scene was, certainly fire and dark are a theme in the whole thing, but it was subtle and it was meaningful, and it resonated with me a long time.
Because he brought the light into an emotional darkness there, not just a physical darkness. So
yeah,
I liked that.
Absolutely.
So, but it also makes me wonder. I mean, the average. I'm not sure what the age difference is between Cersei and Tyrion. Do you have any idea?
I was thinking 5, 6.
Would the average 5 or 6-year-old girl grab the penis of a baby and try to tear it off? Practically,
a really, really cruel monster would.
Or did something happen to her? I don't know. I mean, that's pretty extreme behavior. That's all.
But I mean, keep in mind, her mother had just died, and her father was railing on about how this monster killed her mother. I mean, she's the only girl.
Put a pillow over his face. You don't go for his penis like that. I don't know. That there's something about that detail that.
It's a thing that she doesn't have, though. I mean, if you're looking at it from a total Freudian perspective,
maybe
we've talked a lot about how Cersei is the son that Tywin never had. So, she exacting a certain kind of vengeance on a very tender part, the only part that she knows in a man that is absolutely vulnerable.
Right, but how does she know that?
Because her brother. I'm sure she kicked him in the balls.
I mean, yeah.
And then he liked it, and then you know what happened from there. So, but I mean, it's kind of like, you know, I know when my son was like 4 and he figured out that it really hurt when, you know, Michael got punched in the balls. It was like I have the keys to the kingdom. You know, I can fell this mighty giant with one twist of my wrist. So I'm sure. I mean, there's no video games in Westeros. Castle Rock is an awful place, and the food is terrible, and you know, there's not a lot to do. So you figure out people's
kicking each other.
And maybe that's an interesting comment between Varys and Cersei. What is their relationship? He doesn't have a penis. She can't pull it. So what do they do? I don't know. That's a weird tangent, but.
She would have no idea what to do with the Unsullied.
She wouldn't. I mean, maybe that's the problem. Like, so if we could take this a little further, Daenerys has an entire army of men without them. So
She's doing just fine controlling them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there anything else anyone else has to say before we close this? We've been going for about 40 minutes. So, but you know, I for an episode that didn't have anywhere near the kind of production value that even the last few episodes had, I thought it was one of the strongest of the season. I really do. It feels like more happened in character growth and motivation through almost every thread versus the last few, which had kind of felt like they were very much in the same vein.
I agree. It wasn't, let's move chess pieces around. It was emotional give and take.
Yeah. There was a lot of raw nerves, too. It was like, let's really talk about this. You know, and you know, certainly the scene with the dying man, like, you know, when he said, I wish this was wine, he said, so do I. It was like, I mean, talk about the gates of life and death and what the meaning of living even is. It was just kind of astonishing to see it so brutally handed out, and yet in the next moment, Arya making that decision to take that man's life. So I think it's certainly setting us up for a fantastic next 3 episodes. I hope you join us. Again, I'm Natanya Barron, at Natanya Barron on Twitter, Michael Harrison at Oldby, and Andrea Schwalm at, I guess you're at Andrea Schwalm now, correct?
I am. I changed it.
You did. You changed it. So you can follow us on Twitter and harass us and ask us questions. You can also comment on here. We love listening to what you have to say. You can visit us at geekmom.com and at geekdad.com to get your daily, weekly dose of all things geeky. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff. In the meantime, if you have questions or things you want to talk about, things that we missed, let us know in the comments and we'll get back to you. Have a great week and tune in next time for the, what is it? Is there a word for third penultimate? Penultimate and second to last. Is there a word for the next one over? There should be.
We'll figure it out before next week.
We will figure it out before next week, and we will talk about having a spoiler cast for those of you who have read the books and are speculating like we are. So take care and good travels.